Good morning. All right. Today we are working on fractions. Fractions are just pieces of a whole. Anytime you have a fraction, it is some pieces of something between 0 and 1. So I've got, a certain amount of slices of something. So we're going to use pizza as an example. So I have a whole pizza and it has 8 slices. So if I'm representing this whole pizza as a fraction, our container is always the denominator. It's how many of that whole were there. How many slices, how many sections of it existed at one point. We're not interested in, what it is now. It was what was it originally. When you had a division of it, how many sections did you have? So you will always say that this pizza had 8 sections, because there were 8 slices altogether. Well, I have 8 slices left. If the denominator is the container of how many were there originally, the top is, well, how many are there at this moment? Well, at this moment, there are 8 slices. So what can we say about this pizza? Well, we can say that this pizza is one whole pizza. The container is that there were originally 8 slices. There are currently 8 slices. So this is one whole pizza, right? Well, let's say I have a whole pizza and only 2 slices. Well, how many slices were there originally? Well, there were 8 slices originally. So my container is that there were 8 slices because, that's how many there were originally. Well, how many are left now? Well, now we have 2. We have 2 slices left. So that's represented by 2, 8. Well, there's something more we can say about that. So notice here that I could section, here is, parts missing here. So there were 2 slices here, 2 slices here, and 2 slices here. So there were 4 quarters of this original pizza. So notice that I have 2 slices left. So I could represent this as 1/4 of the entire pizza that there was. If you cut it into four sections, you change the container to 4. I've got 1/4 of this. So 2/8 is equal to 1/4. All right, now let's say I had 8 slices originally. And I've only got 4 left. So there are 4 slices of this pizza left. Well, how many were there originally? There was 8. So my container is 8. And I have 4 slices left. Well, what's something we can say about this pizza? Half of this pizza is gone, right? Half of that pizza doesn't exist. So you've got 1/2 of that pizza left. Well, what do you notice about 4 and 8? Isn't 4 half of 8? So this is 1/2. So we're going to use food examples to kind of practice this a little bit. Before we get some examples, we need to talk about the other 2 types of fractions. All right, you've got 2 other types of fractions. You have improper fractions. So you've got IF, improper fractions. So an improper fraction is any time you have more than one whole pizza. If you have one whole pizza, you have 8/8 slices. But let's say we went to Venus Pie and you can order by the slice. So let's say I ordered 1 extra slice. I have 1/8. Because originally there was 8 slices, and out of that next one, we only have 1 slice. So how many slices did I have here? Well, I had 8 slices here, and I have 1 slice. So if I were to add these together, how many slices of the original container, remember the container doesn't change. There were always 8 slices, in a whole pizza. But the numerator, the top part, is how many slices are there now? There are 9 slices, and the original container size was 8. So this is an improper fraction. And why it's called an improper fraction is that you have more than one whole container. You have more than one pizza. You've got an additional slice. So you have 9 slices in total. Now you can write this as the second type, which is called a mixed number. MN is a mixed number. So a mixed number is when you can write a fraction by whole pizzas, So how many whole pizzas were there? Well, there's one whole pizza and one slice. So I have one whole pizza, and then I've got one slice left over. So I've got one slice, and the original container was 8. This is how you write a mixed number. So these two things are saying the same thing. 9 over 8 is an improper fraction, which is just saying that there were 9 slices in total. But if I wanted to know, okay, well, how many whole pizzas is that? That is one whole pizza and one additional slice. So we're gonna practice this a little bit. Okay. All right, I've got 3 whole pizzas and 2 slices. So think about it like this. Remember, because we're using pizzas, our container is 8. In a whole pizza, there are 8 slices. So I have 8 slices here, 8 slices here, 8 slices here, 1 slice, and 1 slice. So how many slices do I have? Well, let's add some of these numbers up. So 8 plus 8 is 16. So I've got 16 plus 8 is 24. So I've got 8, 8, 8, which gives me 24, plus 1. So I've got 24 plus 1, which is 25. And then I've got 25 plus 1, which is 26. So I have 26 slices in total. Now, how many, so that's the improper fraction. If I wanted to write that as a mixed number, how many whole pizzas did I have? Well, I have 1, 2, 3 whole pizzas. And then how many slices did I have left over? Well, notice I have 2 slices. So this is 2 over 8. And remember what we said about 2 over 8? They're both divisible by 2. The numerator and denominator can both be divided by 2. So if I divide by 2, and I divide by 2, I have 1, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So that is 3 1/4 pizza left. All right, let's say I have 2 whole pizzas and 3 slices. So how many slices do I have? So remember, we're still in sections of 8. I have 8 slices here, 8 slices here, 1 slice, 1 slice, 1 slice. So 8 plus 8 is 16. 16 plus 1 is 17. 17 plus 1 is 18. 18 plus 1 is 19. So if I add those to my 16, I would get 19 slices. All right, let's write that as a mixed number. How many whole pizzas did I have? Well, I have 2 whole pizzas. And then how many slices did I have? I had 3 slices, and my original container was 8. So out of a whole pizza, I've got 2 whole pizzas and then 3 slices left. Out of that, you have that third whole. Now, notice that 3 is not divisible by 2. It is only divisible by 1, but if you divide 3 by 1, it's 3. If you divide 8 by 1, it's 8. So it is not divisible by something. We can't reduce this any further. So that's the answer. But just notice that these two things are equal to each other. 19. There are 19 slices here, and there are also 2 whole pizzas and 3 slices. That is, an equal statement. All right. What if I get away from pizza and get to something like I have a tray of lasagna? So in this tray of lasagna, I can divide this up into 5 pieces. So I've got 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 piece, 4 piece, and 5 sections of lasagna. We're going to use food examples. They did too. I mean, food examples are just the easiest. So what is my container? How many slices, big was 1 tray of lasagna? So it was always 5 sections, right? So our container is 5. How many slices are left? Well, there are 5 slices left. All right, let's say that I ate a slice. How many slices are left? There are now 4 slices, and my original container was 5. All right, let's say I ate another slice. How many slices are left? 3 slices left of my original 5. And so on and so forth. You eat another slice, you've got 2/5. You eat another slice, you've got 1/5. You eat the last one, you got 0. There's nothing left. Okay, so think about it like this. I have 2 trays of lasagna, and then I've got a plate with a slice and a plate with a slice. So what's my container? In this original tray, how many slices were there? For a whole tray, there were 5. There were 5 sections of this lasagna tray. And then I've got 1 piece and 1 piece. So my container is 5. How many slices do I have? So I've got 5 slices plus 5 slices, which is 10 slices, plus 1 slice is 11, plus 1 more is 12. So there are 12 slices of lasagna here. And my original container is 5. How many whole lasagnas do we have? Well, notice that we have 2. We have 2 whole lasagnas. And how many slices? We've got 2. We have 2 slices left. And our original container is 5. So I have 2 whole slices, or 2 whole lasagna in 2 slices. So 2 whole and 2/5. And I also have 5 slices plus 5 slices plus 1 is 12. So that's the relationship between improper fractions and mixed numbers. So now let's try some kind of weirder combinations and get away from the food example a little bit. Not entirely, just a little bit. Okay. So, for fun's sake, let's say I have 36 slices of something that has a container of 7. Now this is a weird mixed number, right? Or improper fraction. This is a weird improper fraction. So there's 2 ways of thinking about how I can get to reducing this number. All right, the first way is we're going to look at how many whole groups of 7 does it take to get to 36 slices of something. So we've got 36 slices of something. That's a lot of slices. How many whole containers does that fill? So let's say I have a whole container of something, a whole container of something, a whole container of something, a whole container of something. Okay, I've got 8 whole containers. And remember, our denominator is 7. So these can all be filled 7 big. After 7 slices of something, that container is filled. So let's start subtracting from 36. So let's say I've got 36 slices in whole, and each time I fill one container, I'll bring this down by 7. So I got 7 here, 7 here, 7 here, 7 here, 7 here. So 7 plus 7 is 14. So together this is 14, big. Plus 7 is 21. That's 21 slices. Plus 7 is 28. That is 28 slices. Plus 7 is 35. That is 35 slices. So notice that to get to, I cannot do a whole nother 7 of something. There's not enough left. I've taken 7 away once. That gave us, 7 here. If I subtracted by 36, that would be 29. If I subtract it again, it would be 22. If I subtract it again, it would be 15. Subtract again, and don't get too confused by that. So how many of these was I able to fill? So I was able to find 5 whole containers, because 7 times 5 is 35. So I was able to get 7 over 7 plus 7 over 7 plus 7 over 7 plus 7 over 7 plus 7 over 7. So if I were to write this differently, I have 7 over 7 plus 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 1 more. Because I had 5 whole containers. I was able to fill 5 whole containers, and I had 1 slice left. So 36 over 7 is the same thing as 5 and 1/7. I know that's a bit of a harder one. There's 2 different ways to think about that. So there's this way of how many containers did I fill, and then there's another way that's a little bit faster, but just kind of takes understanding of multiples. So instead of dividing it into equal parts, I could say if I have 36 over 7, how many multiples of 7 does it take to get 36? So let's do it this way. I have 7 times 1. I have 7 times 2. I have 7 times 3. I have 7 times 4. I have 7 times 5. And I have 7 times 6. We'll go 1 too far to show you, where the line is drawn. This is also how you do factoring. So 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times 4 is 28. 7 times 5 is 35. And 7 times 6 is 42. So where does 36 fall? Well, 36 would fall right here. In between 35 and 42. So you were able to get, a multiple of 5. So we know that 7 times 5 is 35. And that just leaves, you could write that as 5 whole containers, and then 36 minus 35 over 7, which is the same as just 1 over 7. So the answer is you have 5 whole containers and then 1 over 7. So whichever is easier, you can think about dividing it into 7 parts. How many containers can I fill? I can fill 5 whole containers. Or you can think of, if my containers are 7 big, what number times 5 or times 7 will get me as close to 36 as possible? Well, 5 gets you the closest. So because it gets you to 35. You're 1 away from 36. So you were able to fill 5 whole containers, and you got 1 slice left. So let's try one more. And we'll make this one a little bit of an easier example. I wanted to give you a weird example to kind of show the long way. So let's try something a little bit smaller. Let's say I've got 12 over, I don't know, 12 over 3. Why not? We'll do 12 over 3. Something that's nice and divisible. Okay, so my container sizes are 3. And I have 12. So we'll do it the first way. How many containers can I fill? So I've got a container of 3, 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 and a container of 3. So we're going to add up to 12. So I've got 1, 2, 3 here, 1, 2, 3 here, 1, 2, 3 here, 1, 2, 3 here. So this would be 6, plus 3 is 9, plus 3 more is 12. So I was able to fill 4 whole containers with nothing left over. So if I were to write this as a mixed number, it's just really 4, because you were able to fill 4 whole containers. So that was the divising side into how many containers can I fill. Let's do it the multiples route of what number times 3, your denominator, gets you as close to 12 as possible. So if I multiplied 3 by 1, I would get 3. If I multiplied it by 2, I would get 6. If I multiplied it by 3, I would get 9. If I multiplied it by 4, I would get 12. And if I multiplied it by 5, I would get 15. So notice that I'm only trying to get to 12. Where does 12 fall closest to? Well, it falls closest to right here. I can't make 5 containers. That last container is empty. And I was able to fill 4 whole containers. So 12 over 3 is just 4. So that is conceptually how improper fractions and mixed numbers work together. If you were ever stuck on a fraction, if it helps to draw some circles and pretend that they are slices of something, like pies or anything like that, just remember that the denominator is always, so if I have some number over some number, the denominator is always the container, and this is the number of slices. So if it's 3 is my container, I always have 3. Sorry, I just saw that my work messaged me. I have to check that in a second. 3 was always the container. And if I've got 9 slices, I'm able to fill 3 containers. If I have 10 slices, I'm able to fill 3 containers, and I've got 1 left over. This is always how many there are. So let's say your denominator is 4. Well, then whatever this food item is, its container, there are 4 slices before it's filled. If your container is 6, then there are 6 slices of something before it's filled. If it's 8, there are 8 slices of something before it's filled. That's the denominator. The numerator is how many slices are there. So if I have, my container is the size of 6, and I have 7 slices, I can fill 1 whole container, and I've got 1 left over. So that would be 7 over 6, which is also 1 and 1/6. Bye.